My name is Melissa McKinstry. I'm a host of a quarterly poetry and jazz series in San Diego and a lover of words in general, and you're in the written scene.
Hello and welcome to The Written Scene. My name is Adam Greenfield. I am the host, I'm the producer, and the many other things are welcome. If you are new here, what we do is we talk about writing, the path and process, and how people got there. If you have been here before, welcome back. I'm glad you're here again. Today's episode is kind of a special one. I could tell you the number. It's episode 104, and that's an arbitrary number, you might think, to be a special number. But what that means is this is the 4-year anniversary of this podcast. I am doing this for fun. I don't get paid for any of it. I'm also kind of selfishly taking all the advice and using it for my own writing, but that's what we writers do. So if you've been here the entire time, I really do appreciate it. If you're new here, you have 103 episodes to catch up on. No rush or anything. They'll be there for a while. So welcome again, and thank you all for listening. I really, really do appreciate it. All right. That out of the way, we can jump in. Today's guest is someone. It's a name I've known, I've heard, I've heard talked about by common friends as well, and she's literally down the street from me. And I kind of just found this out. She's got a tree out front that I walked past many times over the last 15 years, and didn't even know. So I'm very excited to talk to the person that does this. So Melissa, thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure, and congratulations on 4 years of being such a strong contributor to the literary ecosystem. Thank you.
I'm trying. Thank you. I appreciate that. I really hope these conversations are a benefit and people sort of use them for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, these things, I love talking about writing, and there's a lot of podcasts out there that talk about writing, and it's great, and I'm hoping we can add a little bit to that conversation. So I like making this podcast. It's fun. It's my little baby. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump in. As I want to talk about current stuff to start. Over the last few years, you've been getting not only your work published, but pulling in some accolades along with it. So that's congratulations on all those.
Thank you very much.
What has been the most exciting part about it, and also what's been the most surprising?
I think I can answer that with the same thing, actually.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
In 2024, I was selected to be the inaugural writer in residence at the Malay House in Rockland, Maine.
Oh, wow.
This is a old duplex on Broadway, and it is the site where Edna St. Vincent Millay was born. And the invitation to be that writer in residence came as a complete shock to me. I had applied sort of thinking, well, I think a residence might be good for me, and maybe if I can get all the pieces of an application together and understand what those look like and go through the process, then I'll be ready. You know?
Yeah.
This probably won't be it. It's my first try. I don't know. And it's their inaugural.
Oh, it was their first one too?
I was the first for them too.
Oh, cool.
Right.
Okay.
And so when I was selected, it was just such an honor and a surprise and so exciting to have this opportunity to spend a month someplace immersed in writing. I think because I was their first resident as well, after all the fundraising and work they'd done to renovate this house that was in ramshackle condition when they were able to secure it.
Oh, okay. It must have been, I assume then it was in very old, the whole entire structure was the original.
Exactly.
Yeah, wow.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. And so this group of people who love Edna St. Vincent Millay and live in the Mid-Coast, Maine area got together and did a lot of intensive fundraising efforts and pooled resources of time and talent to secure the property, renovate the duplex, and do all the things they needed to do to actually start a residency program there.
Yeah.
So they host 2 juried residencies every year now in October and July. And I now serve on the board with them, which is a whole nother exciting thing that has come out of this.
Yeah.
Because I made such good friends there. And I think one of the other things that was most exciting is that I saw all the ways that this group of artists and writers in Midcoast Maine were coming together to really create a thriving poetry scene. And it wasn't about money or flash or razzle dazzle. It was about genuinely creating community opportunities for people to come together, share a love of poetry, maybe partake in a potluck, go to an open mic, be part of a local poetry festival. And I thought, wow, this is just amazing. And, one of the funny things that happened is I didn't do as much writing there as I
Really?
had anticipated. I thought, I'm going to write for a month. But I think because they were excited to have their first resident and I was excited for my first residency, it ended up being a little bit like puppies off leash at the beach,
Right.
And we were all just like, well, what do you want to do next? What do you want to do now?
Yeah.
And I really was so warmly invited into the community and into people's homes and into the full experience of the literary community there. And when I got home, I said to my husband, they're doing all these things. Why aren't we doing something? And he said, well, what do you want to do?
What do you want to do? Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And that was the beginning in winter of 2025
Okay.
of our quarterly reading and jazz series that we started hosting in our backyard. And it's been exciting. Once again, not because of any big flash and dash, but because it became an opportunity to invite people to bring a little food or drink to share, to get to know each other, to share in the joy of hearing a few poets read, a little live music. And I think that it's been so fulfilling and the response has been so exciting because I think what happened was it wasn't all about people coming to hear poetry. In fact, I think it's true that the vast majority of people who've come to these events have not necessarily been part of the local poetry scene. They might never have been to a poetry reading. They might not own a book of poetry, but they're interested in being together, in being with each other.
A part of that community and just seeing what it's about.
And checking it out, right. So that all really was inspired by my time at the Malay House and by the community there.
I went to the one a couple months ago, a month or so ago, and I loved the vendors, and none of them were about writing.
Yes,
which was so great. It was like a little maker's mart with poetry and music and food.
I'm so glad that you enjoyed that. We decided to try it because the November show, within a week of the actual date of the show, had to change venue. The forecast was rain.
Right.
We'd been holding all these events in our backyard. We'd done 3 of them. November was the 4th. And we realized in those few days worth of time that the forecast was really holding as rain and wind and cold. And so we had to pivot. And Meraki generously, at the very last minute arrangement, invited us to use their space, including their catering and, some other things. But we realized with that amount of space, we could increase the number of seats and invite more people, which was exciting.
Yeah.
And then because it was a pre-holiday show, we'd already lined up 4 vendors to come who are local makers.
That's great.
Yeah, it was really fun. It was really fun. And the space ended up being perfect for that too, because nobody's stuff got wet or blown away or,
what's crazy is even that day, it was sunny.
I know.
I
know. It was windy but sunny.
Still,
But we couldn't,
you know
how this goes in San Diego.
Yeah. We take what we can get.
Exactly.
And a lot of the times we're a little spoiled.
Exactly.
But when you're looking for a space to do something like that, you've said you've done it in your backyard a few times. Now that you've done it in a bigger space, do you see the benefit of having it in a bigger space, or do you like that sort of small get-together gathering that's intimate?
Yeah, we've just been meeting with friends and talking over this very, element of the shows going forward. We really love the intimacy of the backyard.
Yeah.
And we've had about, 80 to 90 people at those events.
Okay. How many showed up for the one indoors?
About 150.
150, so almost double that.
Yeah, we were really able to add some seats. And because we filled that space too, it's exciting to think, not out of chutzpah or pride, but out of inclusivity.
Yeah.
Yeah, more people were interested, more people came.
More the better.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Why not have more people hearing the music and the poetry and seeing the local makers if, So, yeah, we're sort of torn. We have gone ahead and scheduled the next event in February
Okay.
at Meraki.
At Meraki, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
So that's on the 22nd. It's another Sunday matinee from
Okay.
1 to 4 in the afternoon.
February 22nd?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't know. Let me see real quick. Let me just double check. This comes out a week before, the same week.
Perfect.
So this will be good timing.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
this event will be on Eventbrite under Poet Tree Productions, 3 separate words named after our tree that Adam mentioned in the intro.
And I will get to at some point.
Okay.
I got questions about it. So,
Okay.
yeah. So that's great. I love that you guys are still going with it. And I think it's cool that you saw in a bigger space what it can be as well.
Yes, the cost is a little bit daunting, so we're working right now on, we really want the event to remain free to anyone who'd like to come and have it be free. Meraki has a basic catering fee, and we like to support them too. They're part of the local Buona Forchetta family, for those of you who are in San Diego.
Best Italian food in San Diego as far as
wonderful.
I'm concerned. But
we're across the street from one of their places right now. And
flagship.
Exactly. So we're figuring out, I think a friend has introduced me to this green bottle method of social justice paying for events, which is that you charge 3 tiers. One, a little bit more than you need to cover cost of the event.
Mm-hmm.
One that's closer to the actual cost, and one that's a little bit below, that hopefully is, most affordable for most people.
Right.
And then still have the option of people being able to attend without a fee. And the people who are able to afford paying at that top tier then help make up for somebody who's not able to pay
it's a community
what it's costing, right? Really helping each other out, sort of like we do when we're in the backyard and everybody brings something to share. So it's kind of a similar model that we think we'll probably implement for the February show to help us cover that basic. Meraki has already gone as low as they can with us, by the way, just to complement their community effort in so many things that the Buona Forchetta and Matteo family have done for our community. They really want to make arts accessible and education. They've been a great supporter of the public schools here in our neighborhood. And so we're just really feel so fortunate that the space is even an option.
It's an option available.
We're just trying to figure out how to make it sustainable for ourselves as well.
Yeah, the cost to do something for a community is more than what I think the community sees.
Probably, it might be. And so,
but it's worth it.
The food spread is wonderful. So if maybe if people think of it as a beautiful lunch buffet with food from Buona Forchetta, and an hour or two of jazz and poetry and all the good things.
It's hard to miss. I mean, it's something you have to go and check out. And I think if you open it up to an option of people paying, people are going to pay. I mean, I think that what I've found is that when you leave it to people to determine that for themselves, a lot more often than not, people are going to go, I've got a little bit. Let me see what I can do. So
yeah, and I think part of this hosting these events that's been so astounding is the generosity and enthusiasm of so many people who are interested and curious and wanting to celebrate the poetry and the music.
Yeah.
So I feel that spirit of generosity deeply, and I'm confident that we can figure out a way to, keep going.
That's great.
Yeah.
I'm excited about it. So people need to come check these out. I'm curious, just really to backtrack one quick second. Are you a fan of Edna St. Vincent Millay?
I am.
You are?
And
Okay.
I'll tell you just a brief little story. When I was a child, my grandfather had a beautiful collection of books. He was a real reader, and from as early as I can remember going over to his house every Sunday, he would invite me to take any book I wished off the shelves.
I love that.
Without filter. Take it home, read it, bring it back the next Sunday, swap it out, talk about it with him if I wished. Didn't have to, but it was always an invitation.
It's an option. Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. He was willing to talk about anything on the shelves. And, I started with some of the children's books and worked my way to Alice in Wonderland and the whole Oz series that he owned and all those good things. And then, just kept reading. And one of the books that he had that I discovered when I was a teenager was a collection of Edna St. Vincent Millay's, A Few Figs from Thistle.
Okay.
And so I loved it and cherished it. And when my grandfather passed away, I was able to take a few of the books and make them part of my own collection. And that's one
great.
of them
Yeah.
that I've had for many, many years. And so when I applied for the residency, I explained
The whole
that, and that my connection had really been
lifelong.
via my grandfather. Yeah.
That's great.
And it's wonderful. It's not a first edition copy, but it's an early copy of this little slender volume. And it's inscribed to him from a friend, which is also just this wonderful special
Is it
thing.
dated
On
too?
Christmas, it's dated.
Oh,
Yes.
that's
yes,
great. That's
yeah.
so cool. What year?
Yeah.
Do you remember?
I can't remember off the top of my head, but I want to say might be 1927 or 1928 or something.
That's so cool.
I'll check that and
Yeah.
and let you know. But yeah, it's early.
I love that stuff. I love finding like those old books and even having that access to them. I have, on the shelf behind me, a thesaurus from when my mother was in elementary or middle school,
So
and
great.
it's even got a little slip of paper in there that says that she won the spelling bee in 8th grade or something,
I love it.
So it's just like, it's so cool to still have these not old style, but older published books.
Yes.
On our shelves and in relatively good condition,
Yes,
hopefully.
that's right. So. And isn't a thesaurus a long-lasting gift?
It
One of my favorite writing tools.
Never ends. Yeah. It never ends, right? So you kind of tapped into a little bit of my next question. As a kid, what were some of the things you were reading? You were reading the Kid Lit, and then, Alice in Wonderland, and then went into poetry. But were there other things that really drew you in?
Yeah, I think... my grandfather was also a huge poetry fan himself.
Okay.
And so he read a lot of Tennyson and things with this very, not unusual for the time and his childhood, but that had a very strong sense of rhythm. And I think that early on it was an invitation, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, to be in this world of this sort of almost epic narrative poem that had this very sure sense of music, and the sonic quality was so inviting and so almost lulling. And so to read a poem like The Children's Hour or Hiawatha or Paul Revere's Ride, I was invited, and I can still hear his voice with its deep, sonorous quality reading to me.
To you, yeah.
These poems that I think, without me knowing it maybe at the time, I knew I loved it and kind of couldn't get enough, but I didn't really know where it would lead.
Yeah, but that was the fun about it, I think.
Yes.
Like I've heard so many stories that are my own as well, where as a kid you go to the library and you come home with a stack of books that just take you on these crazy adventures for a week or 2 weeks.
Yeah, I grew up in a very rural setting in the foothills of Mount Rainier on the Enumclaw Plateau, and just outside of Seattle, Washington. For those of you who might not know, we're familiar with that area, but. In the summers when we weren't in school, we had a bookmobile.
Oh, I love
that
those.
Would come out to the rural areas, and it was just the best day of the week when that bookmobile would show up. I think it was a Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah.
All the kids around would, come up and be so excited to get in there. And
I still see them here and there.
That's very cool.
Not as big as they used to be.
Yeah.
Like it's more like the little kitschy ones, but I remember the ones where you would walk in and there would just be rows of like shelves of books,
That's it. That's how it looked.
It just smelled like paper,
Spent a lot of time in public libraries my whole life, and so grateful for the resource. And as you said, taking home a stack of books and living in a climate that was often damp and I could read for hours.
You had to visualize worlds that were different.
And I was so happy to. Yeah, I'm definitely invited into that.
So how did that area shape you as a writer?
I think a real keen connection to the natural world, to weather.
Yeah, I bet, yeah.
The names of plants and animals. We had a small 10-acre family farm. It was not a farm that produced for my family's livelihood, but my parents hoped for us, my brother and sister and I, to grow up on a farm and in that kind of environment. And so my dad worked for Pacific Northwest Bell at the time, that later became US West, and commuted about an hour each direction into Seattle so that we could live out in Enumclaw.
Wow.
And we lived in Hillsboro, Oregon before that, and he worked in Portland and then got transferred up to the Seattle branch. Yeah, so, it was a sacrifice, and there were, I think the work of living on a farm often gets romanticized. We think, oh, what a bucolic setting.
Right, yeah.
And it is, but of course there's a lot of daily toil that goes into even keeping a small herd of cows and a horse or two and a few pigs and a chicken coop. But by being there, we learned intimately about life cycle, about where our food came from, about how to grow things in the garden, how to take care of the garden. And I think it also gave me a language that has continued to appear in my poetry.
Yeah.
About the names of things, I'll say, as a general marker.
Yeah.
That I think shows up in my work.
Your environment shapes you in so many different ways, and I think it probably helped you being in that rural area and having to sort of fill your time in creative ways probably helps you as a writer to sort of fill that page in a creative way as well.
Yeah. My brother and sister were much more involved with the animals as we got older and into our teen years, and I really went the direction of words.
Yeah.
So I could often be found kind of wedged in between the old sofa and the side of the wood stove with my stack of books, and it was a way to travel and to experience language and to sort of, as I mentioned before with my grandfather, pick up on the rhythms of language.
Yeah.
And I think I was falling in love with syntax before I even knew what it was called, but just intrigued by the way an author could create a setting and characters, yes, but also there's something about voice.
Yes. Yeah.
Something about the way, you came to expect a certain character speaking in a certain way, or a certain narrator having certain colloquialisms or kind of rhetorical tics that really charmed me. I think that became part of the thing that most fascinated me and that I most wanted to experiment with and emulate as I moved from being such a reader into also being a writer.
Being a writer, yeah. The author that got me excited about language and how you use it, especially in dialogue, was Sherman Alexie.
Yeah.
Like just the way he would create dialogue with his characters. It was just like I've never heard people speak that way, but I could hear it in my head.
Yes. He is wonderful.
Him and James Baldwin.
His wonderful short stories.
Yeah.
Oh,
and Sherman's Alexie's from that area as well,
yeah,
right?
He's from Spokane. That's where my dad was born and raised, actually, which is east of the mountains, near the Idaho border.
Yeah.
The northeast corner of Washington State. And I believe his homeland is just outside of the town of Spokane, a little north, I believe.
North. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love Sherman Alexie. His writing is so special.
Yes.
Anyway, so you went to school. You got an MFA, but you got that later in life.
Much later, yes.
What was the catalyst for that?
I think part of it was that I finally had time to pursue it, which I know is a common response. And I was part of a low residency MFA program at Pacific University in Oregon, coincidentally just miles away from where I lived in Hillsboro as a child, outside of Portland. And I really went there, though, to study with Ellen Bass. But later in life, after retiring from a whole career as teaching high school English, during which I'd always written with my students and never really been far from writing poetry. I'd written my whole life, really. But I'd never pursued it as my own passion because the teaching world, life had been so busy. And I'd also been sharing care for my son. And Charlie passed away in 2022. He was born with an undiagnosed genetic disorder and always required full care. and he lived through my whole time at the MFA program.
Wow.
And died, not long after I graduated, actually.
Just waiting for you to graduate.
Yeah,
Wanted to see it, huh?
but he was, I think, part of the inspiration too.
Okay.
The thing was, I thought Charlie was kind of a champion in a way, a quiet champion of my writing. He often sat in his wheelchair side by side with me at the desk, and we listened to music, and or he would take a little nap, and I would be writing away, and then we would go out for a walk and see what was happening outside, and listen to the birds and feel the breeze, and come back in. And he really felt like a writing companion in many ways. And I thought, I can do so much here with Charlie by my side, and a low residency program also felt doable. Charlie's dad and I divorced when he was young, but we always shared care.
Yeah.
And so there were these stretches of time when his dad would travel a bit, or I would travel a bit, and I thought this low residency model seems like something that might be manageable, doable. And I was already, had been reading and writing so much my whole life. So
was getting this MFA. I'm trying to figure out the best way to ask this, because I know why I'm going for it, and even when I had to write the statement of purpose, I actually had to really think if that really was why I was writing it or going for it. So I'm curious, what was your reasoning to really get that higher level of degree when you, I guess, and this is going to sound probably not the best way to say it, but you could have just kept writing.
That's true. And I think part of it for me was discovering the poetry of Ellen Bass, who became my mentor. And I thought if I could apprentice myself to one or more mentors in a program like that I might really have the opportunity to grow in a way that I might not on my own. And certainly reading books by many of my, the poets whom I most admire, Dorianne Lux and Ellen Bass, and others in the program, Frank Gaspar being another, Frank X. Gaspar, did teach me. And I was able to somewhat model and grow by that experience of reading closely. But I didn't have all the vocabulary. I didn't have the craft. I didn't always have the impetus or the real push me, pull you. It's not always just a push. I think sometimes it's a pull too. It's like I want to learn and grow, and I can do that most effectively sometimes when I'm working to a deadline, when someone's told me to study something closely, when someone's noticed something in my craft and said, hey, you should check this out. And the model at this low residency program is that we're together for 10 days twice a year in June and January. And then when we aren't together, you're participating in a guided study with one mentor each semester.
Okay.
And so for those months, you exchange a packet once a month with 5 or more poems, generally speaking, and reading commentaries on 4 or 5 books in each packet as well. And your mentor helps you curate that reading list of 20 books each semester. And that was as big a part of the MFA for me as the 10-day residency.
Really?
I found that this list of curated suggestions for my goals and my style and what I was trying to grow, where were the gaps in my craft, each book became a sort of mentor to me. And I was being trained to read closely and being required to write, closely about them. And that really was one of the ways I think that I was most inspired.
Inspired, yeah. Did you find yourself reading more than writing?
I think I found myself striking a balance, and that I really had to, too, in order to complete these monthly packets.
Got it, yeah.
Where we were required to submit new poems each time.
Okay.
One of my mentors was one of the founders of the program. My second semester, I studied with Marvin Bell. And Marvin was from the Iowa Writers Workshop and from the East Coast. And he had dreamed of this model of a low-res program where people who could come and earn an MFA and study intently without having to lift up their whole lives and move to Iowa, let's say, or to some other big university that had a full MFA program.
Right.
And so he was one of the founders of the program at Pacific about 22 years ago now. It was founded.
Wow, okay.
And I had the good fortune to study with him while I was there. And he, one of the things he always said is art is the big yes. And I think, that's really been an inspiration for
It's a
this
good saying.
reading series that I've started too,
Yeah.
is to embrace it and to invite others in. And he certainly was of that mindset. But while I studied with him, he really helped me curate a wonderful reading list because he knew I was trying to write about the experience of mothering Charlie. That had been, and it still is really part of my obsession in my own poetry.
Yeah.
And he suggested a few books to me that really taught me that I could write about this experience and be in it without sentimentality.
Oh, interesting.
And he, showed me different ways of doing that. He introduced me to a book by his friend, the poet Sandra McPherson, who wrote about mothering her daughter who had complex medical issues. And because her daughter wasn't able to communicate in traditional ways with traditional language, there was a way in which Sandra wrote in this book called The Space Between Birds, which was a phrase her daughter coined, where the language of each poem was kind of an echo of some of the ways her daughter was able to articulate her experience of the world. And it was so beautiful. And it really opened up this other idea to me of I could actually let form follow function and let language in some ways imitate the experience.
Oh, yeah.
And that was revolutionary.
Yeah.
And Marvin also invited me to read Danusha Lamaris's first book. And in that, Danusha writes about having an infant with undiagnosed genetic disorder as well. And what that book taught me, though, was something different. And that was that you can use detail to hold the emotion. So without having to
dive into that feeling,
emotion,
yeah,
or narrate, you could let a small detail like the rumpled bed sheets or the sticky red medicine or the unusual quality of the hair or fingernails hold so much. You didn't need to say more. It was all there already. And so Marvin really became formative in helping me give voice to my experience of parenting Charlie, a really complex kid with a very fragile, body.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
But being able to use words in a way that gets you there without explicitly saying it.
Yep.
I think that's what poetry does is it just it this is a weird analogy, but I remember talking with someone who had Alzheimer's once. And I remember they would say things in just a really different way.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's poetry.
Yep. So true. So true. And I think those experiences with language are sometimes so epiphanic. We have these aha moments and we think, oh, yes, I can try this. I can do this. Marvin always asked his students to write a very close imitation poem from each book they read during their semester with studying with him. So that was another way that he really invited me into such close attention to craft, was to say, well, choose one of Sandra McPherson's poems and write a poem really close, just sail really close to that line and don't claim it as your own. Later, maybe you move away, make it your own or add an epigraph after Sandra McPherson's. But it's not so much about that you're writing that poem to have it be your own as you're writing the poem to study closely what that poet is doing with language.
I remember I had a professor once who had us take a poet and write a poem that was pretty much like the way they wrote. And it wasn't to write like them. It was to understand how we can write.
Yes. And I think, it's so much a part of people who are in the visual arts, painting and sculpting, who study the great masters and imitate what they see in order to learn the craft. And this was such a generous invitation of Marvin's in a way that I really did learn. Marvin himself was a musician and possibly, I don't know this for a fact, but maybe some of that invitation came from the way that he perhaps learned how to play jazz trumpet and listen closely to what
improvisation and all that.
Yeah.
That's so important for poetry as well, is that the ability to quickly alter your direction and roll with that description or feeling, and know when you have to come back or not.
Yeah, but be willing to make that turn or leap.
Be open
I
enough.
think that
Yeah,
adds some tension, that opens a window in the poem, that maybe helps us in the act of writing discover something we didn't know when we set out to write the poem, which then in turn, invites the reader into discovery. And there it is. What better reason to read a poem but to learn something about ourselves, about the human condition. I mentioned Danusha Lamaris. The Moons of August is the title of her first book.
Moons of August. Okay.
Moons of August.
I knew we'd get there eventually.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Thank you. And she has since become faculty at Pacific. She wasn't at the time that I was reading that book. But one of the things that she said when I was in a workshop with her was, as human beings and as poets, we really yearn to eavesdrop on the human condition.
Yeah.
We want to know how to get through this thing, we call being human. How do we, celebrate? How do we grieve? How do we make it through a really challenging situation? And I think, reading in general certainly does that for us, as we've talked about the journeys we can go on with a book. But poetry specifically, I think, is a way to experience the human condition in this very often compressed package that isn't being explained or narrated as much as it's being experienced, as much as it's being felt. Here's how this thing feels.
Right.
Here's maybe something I've taken from it in some fashion. However, a poet crafts that without really, most often without explanation, but by giving us an image that holds, we can feel that feeling.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. This actually leads right to my next question, and I'm glad it worked that way, because I've always used poetry as a way to process what I'm feeling. I use fiction to have fun, but poetry is how I process things. I'm curious for you, and I think poetry is perfect for that sort of thing, but I'm curious for you, is there, sort of on the flip side, is there a specific genre that you believe is more effective or capable way of expressing or processing those feelings in a way?
Other than poetry.
Other than poetry.
Wow, that's such an interesting question. I read a fair amount of nonfiction and fiction, and I think that poetry is the thing that really does it for me.
For you, yeah.
Yeah. I just, not just as a writer of poetry, but certainly as a reader, I think that I just keep coming back around to the way that it so concisely and creatively allows us to experience. Yeah, I'd say I'd have to stick with poetry on that one.
There's something about when writing poetry, and and it's different for fiction, for me at least, is that when I write a line of poetry, I'm like, that's not quite what I meant to say. And then I'm in fiction, I'm like, okay,
yeah,
I'm good with that. Like I've edited it. That's what I want to say. But poetry, it's real. It has to be more specific for me.
That's right. It forces you to keep pressing. I think into another thing Danusha says is to keep asking, what's underneath that? What's underneath that? And I was
like a rhetoric professor I had once. Yeah.
And I think there's some invitation to keep exploring, to keep pressing into something, even if it's pain or grief or struggle, and to find the way to hold it. And Marvin has a poem about the burial of his dad, and it's called Poem ending with a line by Lear, a line from Lear.
King Lear.
Or ending,
Okay.
And I think, I'm sorry, it doesn't have poem in the title. The title is Ending with a Line from Lear, I believe.
Okay.
And the last line is never, never, never. Whoa. And the whole experience is standing graveside watching the burial of his father, and it's just so held in detail after detail, and then you get to that last line, and it's just so devastating.
Yeah.
So devastating.
I bet that was powerful for him to write.
I imagine so. And something that I think, could that have been narrated as in an essay? Could it be memoir? Could it be fictionalized? Of course, of course. Could be a short story. The poem itself is so vivid.
Yeah.
Maybe it's in many ways not standing that far apart from another genre. But because of the compression and the lineation and the detail that's held without narration and explanation, we're really invited just into the feeling, into the experience,
directly
so deeply,
into it. Yeah.
so directly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, very moving.
Poetry is so perfect for that. I have been moving away from poetry into fiction's my true love.
I didn't know that, Adam.
Yeah, I have been, fiction is, it's where I feel like I can take a deep breath. Poetry, I've reached a point with poetry where it's almost like, how you'll take melatonin to go to sleep. Then you build up this tolerance to melatonin. Well, now I've hit a point with poetry where it's just not doing it.
Interesting.
It's not enough. It's fun. I enjoy it. I like writing poetry. I like the challenge of it.
Yes.
It's just not doing it for me anymore.
Interesting.
So, and I've said this as well. I like in fiction being able to ruin someone else's life and fix that. That has become a joy. But I think but poetry is perfect for being able to take a feeling and going, okay, what does this truly mean, and how do I live with it in a way? I'm curious. Do you have any creative outlets besides poetry that provides a feeling of joy?
Absolutely. I love to cook. I love to dig around in the garden. I love to walk. And I really love music of all kinds.
Yeah.
There's almost always music going on, playing in the house. And, when I was growing up, my grandfather loved music. Not the grandfather I was telling you about at the library, but my paternal grandfather was a lover of music. And he and my dad built these giant stereo speakers together and had amazing vinyl collections. And
that's great.
Yeah. Part of that vinyl collection is up at my sister's house in the Northwest now, which is so wonderful.
Don't ever get rid of this.
Still together.
Yeah.
But I think that maybe, not too far away from loving the sonic quality of a good poem, I also just love
good lyric.
Music. From classical to jazz to rock. And so listening to music while my hands are busy cooking a meal or folding laundry or, weeding the garden or whatever it is, it's always on and it's always inspiring too.
Yeah. My mother, my dad was in the military, in the Navy. So I, spent time in Japan and Guam and places like that. And my mother was a radio DJ for the military base.
How cool.
Yeah. So she would do the overnight stuff. So I would always listen to the tapes later. But it was rock and roll,
and just so great.
There's always, my dad was big into jazz. So there was always music going in our house, always. And some of it was not music. Some of it was like Spike Jones, like comedy stuff, and it was so there's always music or record playing, even an 8-track if I think we had some of those. So I grew up with that as well, and as you can see, I've got guitars hanging on the wall.
I love it.
I picked up trumpet in 2nd grade, played that to 10th grade, and then picked up guitar and have been doing that and singing since. So music has always been a part of what I do. The one thing I have to be careful with is that when I'm listening to music while writing, that can be a problem because that will change what I write.
Yes.
So I don't know if you listen to music while writing, but
I frequently do. I've really done a deep dive on jazz lately.
Yeah.
So
it's perfect for writing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So and I find sometimes that it's sort of, maybe I'll use unsticks me or helps me lower the filter a little bit and go maybe a little wilder with the imagination, a little more long-armed with the poem. A quality that I deeply admire in a lot of poets and poems I love is this kind of what Ellen Bass calls the long-armed poem or controlled chaos, and Frank X. Gaspar is one of my favorite poets for that quality, particularly his collection titled Late Rapturous, which also includes the titular poem, Late Rapturous. So if any of you are listening and interested in someone who has incredible mind and a wild imagination and long arms, I definitely recommend
That
Frank
one. Yeah.
Gaspar's Late Rapturous. Yeah. But that kind of sensibility that is almost like jazz that allows you to open to that world. Marvin Bell was a huge fan of Chet Baker. So I've listened to a lot of Chet since meeting Marvin because he said to me, you should try this, check this out, you know?
When you were a kid going to school, and I just thought of this, I remember some teachers playing music while we were taking a test or something like that.
That's interesting. Yeah. My 5th grade teacher did that.
Yeah.
I haven't thought about that for a while, Adam. You just totally brought that back to me.
I don't know why I thought of it just now.
She loved Gershwin.
Yeah,
I don't know if
it
she
was
would
always
play it while we were
classical
taking a test, but I remember her playing it. We ate lunch in the classroom in this rural school. There wasn't a cafeteria. The lunch cart would come to the hallway, and you would go out and get your hot lunch or get your bag lunch out of the, cubby or whatever it was.
Yeah.
She would play Gershwin while we ate lunch. Rhapsody in Blue, I want to say, it comes to mind.
That's great.
Yeah, we loved it. And here's the other thing. We loved it.
Yeah.
I think we were asking
Had no idea
what it was.
But
right.
Yeah, it was so good.
Yeah.
I love that and obviously this is, I think it's been studied for decades about the benefit of music for young minds even. But was it the Babies on Bach or something like that, when you would put the headphones to the stomach, and like there was, I remember those like 30 years ago, those were real big. There's a book here on my shelf that I read last year called Your Brain on Art, and it's all about what the arts does to the chemistry of your brain and how it just opens you up and relaxes you, and I've talked to some writers who can't listen to anything at all while they write, you know.
I think, part of that sort of willingness to go with something and be a little bit more long-armed in my own work means that listening to something leads me there, lends that quality sometimes, or invites that quality.
Yeah. Do you ever, are you more productive when you're not listening to music, or do you notice that it's always...
I'd say I'm more productive when I am listening to music. And even when I'm, I do some research work for Ellen Bass now, research assistant for some of her craft talks. And so I'm frequently reading books of craft on poetry or different collections of poetry, looking, to collect poems on a certain topic or that are illustrating a certain point. And I think I actually get fired up and work more efficiently when I do have particularly jazz or classical playing. And, nowadays being able to build our own playlists without having stacks and stacks of vinyl is just this gift of, and the algorithm of letting it roll into things that, I didn't even choose myself, but discovering things that way is just so exciting to me.
I like that's a little more in control these days. Back in the day when Pandora was around, and you would just let it go and, you'd end up on Britney Spears when you started with Metallica. You're like, what is happening?
What's going there?
But Spotify has these, you can look for playlists by genre, feeling, mood, vibe, whatever it is, and I found all these playlists that are jazz related, and there's like evening jazz, late night jazz, dinner jazz, Sunday morning jazz, and all these ones, and I will put on some of those while I write, and it's just...
And it keeps you going or inspires something. Mood or a tone or...
Right. Yeah. I was looking for a particular word, and I was like, and all of a sudden the new song comes on and I'm like, that's what it was.
Yeah.
So it's amazing what music will do for your writing.
Yes.
So you mentioned a second ago working for Ellen Bass. What does that sort of work, the research, editorial, production assistant, what does that sort of work do for you and your own writing skills?
It's just another gift in my writing life. It's been such a learning experience because of her choices in what she wants to talk about and why, what poems she chooses, selects to do a deep dive on, and being privy to her mind at work. She's a brilliant poet, and something that really attracted me ultimately to the program at Pacific is that I went to one of her workshops and came to understand that she's a brilliant teacher.
Oh, yeah.
And
that always helps.
Yeah.
Not all writers are good teachers.
No,
which
it
is
doesn't.
interesting.
It's not necessarily a corollary. And so to find poets who really have the gift of being able to bring you along and teach you is so great. And she is certainly one of those. So being able to, being on the fringes of her thinking and being influenced by it and seeing, as I mentioned, the choices she makes teaches me a lot about craft in an ongoing way. It sort of feels like in some ways, I've fortunate to kind of be in a mentorship relationship, in that way with her. I was able to study with her for 2 semesters in the program.
Yeah.
And then when I graduated, I said, if there's ever anything I can do for you, let me know. And she said, well, I have an idea. Let's just try it and see how it works out. And if you know Ellen, or you've been to any of her workshops or read her work, she's very precise in her teaching and her writing. And so in true Ellen fashion, so smart, she said, let's see how this works for both of us. Let's see if this is a good idea for both, for each of us.
Yeah.
And she was very right to start it off that way. And so we tried one small experiment and it went well, and she invited me to do more.
It out. Yeah.
So it's been a real gift to me to be able to continue to study and learn with her, essentially. And my great hope is to be able to do a little bit of that for her, so that she in turn brings us another book, brings us more Ellen poems.
Right. In AA, they've got sponsors. As a writer, would you encourage someone finding a mentor like that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I can't say enough good about it. And I think also it doesn't always have to be a faculty member from an MFA program. It can be someone you greatly admire in a community writing group. It can be a peer in a writing group, someone you meet in a writing class or a writing workshop, even if it's online. One of my greatest engines, she and I call each other the engine, so I'm not talking out of turn by saying that, but is my friend Andrea Pearsall. And she and I met in an Ellen Bass workshop, actually. She's a poet and just graduated. She recently graduated from the Rainier Writing Workshop, RWW, in Tacoma, Washington, that Rick Barrett is the director of. He's a great teacher and poet as well. But we meet every Wednesday for 1 hour on Zoom. We've never lived in the same place, but we've been meeting since 2018 for 1 hour once a week, every Wednesday. And because we so deeply respect each other and have become great friends and have come to love each other even, we never want to let each other down. And there's something about that engine, that commitment, that of getting a draft to Andrea every Monday or Tuesday before our meeting on Wednesday for us to comment on with each other, means that I'm producing at least one thing a week that can go to another person.
Right.
It might not be perfect, it might not be polished yet, but it's something on the page. And we're so deeply committed to each other and to this practice that it means that at least 4 drafts get created each month.
Each month, yeah. Wow.
And from there, maybe one of them really is exciting and gets polished further and maybe taken to a different workshop group or sent out for, submitted for publication after, iterations, revisions and work. Yes. But the thing is, it's the steady practice. It's a steady practice because it's a commitment to someone else outside myself.
Holding you accountable.
Whom I respect.
Yeah.
And we both feel this way. And we feel, I think, also committed to this 1 hour model. And I'm mentioning that because I think sometimes it can feel daunting to have a weekly commitment with another person. You're busy, you're working, you're raising children, you're taking care of a parent, all the things, whatever it is in your writer's life that is a very real demand on your time. But to have some manageable commitment to somebody else, I would also just highly recommend as a way to think about an engine in your writing life. It's certainly been that for me, so I can't say enough good about it. And then you can set up the rules of the game however you wish with this other person. She and I have a rhythm where we read the other person's poem aloud.
Oh, wow.
And then comment on it.
Okay.
And then the other person does the same.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just enough. It takes us an hour, We spend a little bit of time catching up with each
That's
other,
perfect.
but the bulk of the time is this commitment to our craft, to our practice.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Every Tuesday morning, I have something similar. Every
Great.
Tuesday
I
morning, I
love
have
it.
two friends. We get up, we get on Zoom, and that's our writing.
Yeah.
It's our writing hour. And what
So
we'll
you
do,
write in community with the camera off,
yes,
or
yeah,
something like
yeah.
that,
So
or
we'll talk for like 10 minutes. Okay,
nice.
what are we gonna do today, or just
Yeah.
catch up or whatever. Write for 45, and then at the end of that, we'll talk for another 10 or 15, and then
Love it.
move about our day.
Yeah.
And and I have come to like, I'm like jonesing for it,
Yeah.
come the
Yeah.
weekend. I'm like, is it Tuesday yet?
Isn't that
Like I
interesting?
need this
Yeah.
moment in time.
And to be in community.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like my own little it's like I'm stepping into a quiet bubble,
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
people, not just people I like, but people I admire, people I respect, and people who I feel like have my best writing interest in mind.
Yeah. Do you share what you've written on some in between weeks, or does it ever vary in patterns so that you see each other's product, or is it
Later
more
on,
about production?
yeah,
Yeah.
later on, like one of
It's
us
more
might
about
be a beta
generative.
reader
Yes. Okay.
once everything's kind of figured out,
Okay.
kind of a thing. And even it doesn't even have to be like what we are writing for, like poetry or fiction or whatever it may be. Like I had them. I was working on my statement of purpose for
Yes.
the grad school stuff, and I
Yeah.
asked them to read that like at a later time, but I would ask them, talk to them about it, and get thoughts from
Nice.
them about it. So yes, we will read things here and there, but
Yeah.
it's more just okay, we're holding each other accountable to sit. Today we write.
Yep.
This moment we write, nothing
Yeah.
else.
I just love that so much. And I think it can be a very simple, no frills arrangement, that you make with one another person or a small
Yeah.
group. It doesn't have to be a lot of people. It doesn't have to be in person. It can be at a time of day and during the week that works.
Yep.
But it is this commitment, and it really does help with production.
Yeah.
Just simply that, is enough.
It is. One of them rescheduled her typically scheduled therapy to a later time so she could do the writing. So because it was a time that fit best for all of us.
Everybody, yeah.
And
Yeah.
once you figure that out, there's no reason to not do it.
Yeah.
Just
great.
jump in. Speaking of community, I want to talk a little bit about we were talking earlier about the poetry and having the reading and everything. I'm curious if you have any stories, good and bad, about experiences in various writing settings you've been in.
Well, I mean, overarching, I think my experience has been positive, but I'll also say that it's somewhat curated. Maybe
Yeah,
if something isn't working, especially when Charlie was still living and we were caring for him, time was just so limited, that if something wasn't productive, I would just kind of quietly absent myself from it, I think, or say, I just can't, I can't keep up with this particular practice. I need to move over,
Adjust and change,
adjust and take care of, prioritize what I had time for. But I think by and large that I've found things and nourished things that really feed my craft, my thinking, my growth, and that I hope also nurture community for others. I think writing can be such a solo effort, for much of our writing lives. We're closeted away, maybe even in a closet, a small space,
some people are,
and we're doing our thing,
Yeah.
and it's great. But also, one of the things I value most is also contributing to the literary ecosystem in some way. Like, I love that you're, making the time and effort to create these podcasts and share something you love and invite other people to share what they're thinking about a writing life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the poetry and jazz evenings are a way of doing that, but also something like being in a couple small writing groups can do that.
Yeah.
Or serving on an alumni community, or inviting other people to an open mic. What are the ways that we can kind of invite people into the community and encourage other people to pursue their passion in writing? Those experiences really feed me.
Yeah, yeah,
And I feel like even introducing sometimes somebody to another person is a way of creating a little network that might not have been there before.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I'm excited about those opportunities. I think serving on the board at the Millay House is a current passion, along with serving on the Alumni Council at Pacific University's MFA program, because it's an opportunity to do that.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
to say to people, well, just because you're leaving the MFA residency or you're graduating from this program doesn't mean you have to be out on your own. All the goodness continues with all this monthly programming that different alumni are sponsoring and hosting and inviting people to. You can keep going.
yeah, yeah,
And even without an MFA program, you know, there are all kinds of opportunities to participate in things online, some that are even free of charge, that we can feed our passion, grow our craft, meet other mentors and colleagues and people with whom we can, you know, deepen our practice.
yeah, yeah. It's amazing what all of these things over time can do. You know,
Yes.
when I was applying for the Point Loma stuff, you know, or no, it was a grant for the Far South Border North grant, and they asked their applicants to list out all the things they're doing in the community. And I was like, okay, you know, and I started listing them out, and I realized that I was doing some really cool stuff and a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is why I feel so almost fulfilled in a way.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I think too that, you know, it's a stay against despair
Yeah.
in our
yeah.
current political climate and with political rhetoric that can be so divisive and so damning and hurtful, and that we have an opportunity to invite a sense of community and inclusivity, and invite people into the world of writing that might for them to be a stay against despair.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really how the poetry started for us. The first poems got hung on the little fig tree at the corner of our front yard here in the South Park neighborhood of San Diego the day after Trump was elected in November 2016. So we've been going now for 9 years
yeah.
of poetry and art being hung on the tree, and just inviting people into a little truth, a little beauty, maybe a little lift, but not always. I think, you know, whatever we put out on the tree, I always think has to hold some element of truth and beauty.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily have to be all beautiful.
Right.
You know, the craft can be beautiful, and it can be very much a poem about grieving. The craft can be beautiful and can be very much a poem about experiencing prejudice.
Yeah.
And still we're giving it voice and space, and people from all over the world have visited and have taken time to write to us or to stop and chat.
That's
and
so cool. Yeah.
talk about, you know, and to share their own poetry on the tree.
Yeah.
Or to share a piece of art that they clip to one of the little clothespins. And I think for us, it has been and continues to be a real way to say, yeah, things might be feeling very desperate and even hopeless at times in the larger world, but we can do one small thing that we can do, and that it helps to have a conversation with someone standing at the tree, to know that we are all connected.
Yeah.
In some way.
In some way. Yeah.
Even though maybe it sounds cliche or cheesy sometimes.
It's true, though.
It's the truth.
Yeah.
That, you know, we found more connection by doing that and more hope. And if we weren't doing it, I think there would be a huge gap in our day in and day out lives that could otherwise be filled with a lot of bleak news. And I'd rather find another poem for the tree, frankly, than read the news. Right. You know, I try not to completely absent myself from reality, but
well, next time I read the news, instead I'm going to just walk to the tree.
Walk to the tree. Yeah, come on over. So.
I have a friend and significant poetic inspiration, Chris Vanoy. He used to live at like 29th and Date here in South Park, and once a month he would have this gathering in his front yard right by these giant trees, and some people would go inside, and we would all just sit around and read poetry.
Love it.
That's it. It was just a circle in a yard. We just sit
bring
there
a poem to share.
Bring a poem to share, and
Good.
we'd read. You know,
Good.
He had to move, so that ended, but now it's being held at some other place.
I was going to say maybe we need to bring that back.
Yeah.
Bring it back.
I want to do something here in the
poem.
South Park neighborhood, but you've cornered that market. And I love it. I think you're doing a better job than I could.
I don't think we could corner any market. This is a free.
I have my readings. It's just not here in South Park. But yeah, I think just being part of that community, you know, and recently being, you know, when I was brought on to the board for San Diego Writers Inc., it made me feel even more embedded in something that I love.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, and that motivated me to just do more.
Yeah, I was going to say that's another important part of our community. I think San Diego has these rich writing pockets. San Diego Writers Inc., Point Loma Nazarene MFA, San Diego State MFA, UCSD MFA program.
The countless readings that are around town.
Wonderful reading series. Our current poet laureate has a reading series called Soft Focus down at Hay Books in the East Village bookstore. Matthew Hine.
And Annika Omar.
And Annika, exactly. And right here in our own neighborhood, Book Catapult does an amazing job of having so many offerings. It's just such a community hub, isn't it?
They do so many different things there. The dime stories, the small publisher events.
The Sunday book chats, the monthly Sunday book chats. The coffee
with the Catapult stuff.
There it is. And Verbatim's reading series up in North Park. Yeah. So I think we really do have this rich array of offerings. It's so exciting.
Yeah, it really is. I when I moved here, and got into it in 2010. I was blown away. I did not expect San Diego to have that, you know. And then I found out that, you know, the National Slam Poetry team, you know, the Slam Poetry team usually wins nationals, and they're from San Diego.
Amazing,
so I had no idea, you know, but I love it. It made me feel like I was in the right place.
And they perform up at Queen Bee.
Yes, Queen Bee's,
in North Park. Yeah.
That's great. I love this. I love this community. Well, let's go ahead and wrap up with our final question. And I ask this of everybody. So I'm curious, if there was one poem, song, book, movie, anything creative you wish you wrote, what would it be?
Oh, I'm going to have to lean into Tom Petty's Wildflower album.
I love that. Nobody said that. Oh, that's so great. That's so great.
I would take just the Wildflower song alone.
Right. But that whole album, The
whole album is just so amazing. Yeah, I'm a fan.
Oh, that's great. I haven't had that answer yet. I get some music answers here and there, but no one has said that specific album by Tom Petty. So that's great. That's great. Do you play music?
I don't play music.
Okay.
Just a fan.
Yeah. Did you ever want to?
Yeah, I do. I have not devoted myself to trying to learn the craft maybe in a way that I could or should, but I certainly am immersed in it every day.
I feel like people with a creative mind, it's not easy, but it's easier.
Yeah.
You know, like
Good. Maybe that's the encouragement I need, Adam.
There it is. Yeah, you've got the creative mind to do it. You listen to enough music. You know, I feel like you would pick it up pretty well. And the fact that you called out a whole album would probably be a good sign too. So, but yeah, I really appreciate that album. That's a good answer. All right. Now I'm going to go listen to it when you leave.
Me too.
Put it in. All right. Well, Melissa, thank you. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you so much, Adam, and congrats on 4 years.
Thank you.